computers for 33 years ago, but you're excellent.
All right, it's a few minutes after 8, so why don't we get started? Sam, before I introduce you, I just wanted to remind everybody that even though the office is closed, the men's club still has the gift cards for Aroma, Glicks, and the Grove, and you can get them by contacting David Dolney, and he'll arrange for you to get them. We also have gift cards for Century Grill now as well. So that's available as well. So without any further ado, want to welcome everybody to the Men's Club's book review. I'm going to be introducing Sam Coleman, who's chairman of these events. We resumed them 2 weeks ago, was our first. And today is our first that's totally Zoom list. The one from 2 weeks ago was a combination of in person at the shul as well as Zoom. So hopefully everybody will mute themselves so there's no interference. And Sam,
I just muted my phone, the other phone. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're all set, Sam.
I tell you, I was intrigued by the whole thing. Some fantastic people are involved with nutrition. I was completely surprised. I mean, you have Maimonides, Aristotle, Hippocrates, Galen, Benjamin Franklin. All these people are busy with diets. I didn't know that. I wonder if, Sarah, did you know that before?
I didn't, but the book looked interesting, and that's why I took it.
So I'm really going to be listening with a lot of attention. Big philosopher, so I won't make fun of my wife anymore. She's busy with the nutrition, what I should eat, what I should not eat. Apparently, diet has something to do not only with our body, it only affects, now we know that nutrition affects everything. And what you eat, as a matter of fact, one of the philosophers, Jewish philosophers, said that eating kosher affects us. We are completely different people because we eat kosher. And I know that vegetarians are prone to be less cruel. So there's something to it. So I'm looking forward to listening to Sarah. And I would like to welcome all of you. I see there's more people now. I don't see pictures, but I see names. So welcome to everyone. And Sarah, it's yours. I'm going to mute myself. Otherwise, I may be disturbing you. So bye. Have a great evening. I'm going to muting myself.
Thank you. Well, I want to thank everyone who took the time to join us tonight. And I'm going to tell you how I got to this book. This book actually belongs to my son and daughter-in-law. And many of you know that I went up to Silver Spring right after Purim because I was making Pesach for them. And I didn't realize that my stay there would be from March into July. And I took a few books with me to be able to read, but it didn't take long for those books to be done. And pretty much there was not a whole lot to do in the past 7 months. You either read or you walked or you cooked or you ate. I mean, that was about all there was to do. So we started exploring my son's bookshelves to find something to read. And because we were doing a lot of cooking and eating, I noticed that I might have put on a pound or two. So when I saw the title, The 5 Skinny Habits, how the ancient wisdom of biblical scholars and doctors can help you lose weight and change your life forever. Well, I can tell you that this book does not make the pandemic go away because the pandemic is absolutely still here. But it was intriguing, so I thought I would read it. Now, the author, David Zollberg, went on this weight loss journey, and he feels that it has really changed his life. What's interesting about him, he's a social worker, but he's developed into a nutritionist, and he's put a whole new facet into his life. But he also was a scholar of sorts, and so he had studied Rambam, and uh, it's all of these teachings that coalesced into his theory. So I want to tell you what I really. Ooh, did I get lost?
You're fine.
Oh,
Keep going.
you're still there.
Okay. So I want to tell you things that I like about this book. This book references every single mention of an ancient or a contemporary study. It's completely referenced. Every chapter has endnotes. So if you find something interesting and you want to follow it up, you have the ability to do that. Another thing that I just found fantastic about this book was that, unlike most diet books that give you recipes for shrimp primavera and pork chops, everything in this book is kosher. There's not one reference to milk and meat together. I mean, it's all kosher. The author also is so excited about his theory that he is repeating it, and he wants to make sure that you grasp what he's trying to uh, tell you about. He also wants the reader to be motivated to change their habits. And you can see by the way that he brings things forth, which is, a nice thing. Throughout the entire book, there's so many references to contemporary studies and to ancient scholars that this man has really researched this very, very thoroughly. And the other thing that the author has, so if you're cheap like I generally am, he has websites, so you can get support and you can even try this out without actually even purchasing the book. One website is the number 5skinnyhabits.com. That's 5skinnyhabits is all one word, and it's the number 5. And the other is diet, the number 2.ll1.org. So both of those, are available. Now, there are some things that I didn't like about the book. It is very repetitive. So on the one hand, I have to admit that once you've read the book, you really have down pat what he's trying to teach you. But gnig already, it was a little bit too much. The other thing that he's not very clear about, because he's telling you how this diet is going to change your life, and he's very clear on what you should do for the first 5 weeks, but then thereafter, he's not quite so clear. He also poo-poos diets that eliminate gluten, dairy, sugar, detox diets, all that kind of stuff. Now, personally, I know that by eliminating gluten, dairy, and sugar, I was able to lose more than 30 pounds. So his opposition is sort of puzzling to me, but to each his own. And again, another thing I didn't like was that um, he, as I will explain, he wants you to learn a new habit every week. And that's why he calls it the 5 skinny habits. But the last habit um, uh, on week 5 is called substitution, where he has you choosing foods that you can add beyond the 3 meals a day. And the point is that how is changing things every day a habit? I mean, I just didn't understand why he needed to have this week 5, but he seems to think it's important, so I'm letting you know. Okay, each chapter begins with what he calls as an aphorism, which is a statement. Like, for instance, medical knowledge is an important prerequisite for intellectual and personal development. That's something that the Rambam said. So, and here's another one. The Rambam said, you should only eat when you are hungry and drink when you're thirsty. That's from the Mishnah Torah. And those are good things because he uses aphorisms as an incentive. You think about these pearls of wisdom, and hopefully they will incent you to continue with a diet. So Rambam says you should only eat when you're hungry. Well, think about it. Do animals overeat? If you put food out for an animal, he finishes it, and then is he looking around to get more food? No. They don't overeat, and they stop when they're full. And think about children, not children that are over 3, but children that are under 3. You put food in front of them and they'll eat what they want, but they will stop when they're full. It takes adults like us to learn to overeat. So let's talk about the Rambam. The Rambam lived from 1135 to 1204. So unfortunately, he didn't really live that long. He lived 69 years. He wrote works on ethics, theology, law, medicine, philosophy, mathematics, language, astronomy. His treatise, Regimen of Health, was used as a textbook in academies and universities. And 300 years after his death, it was the first medical book printed in 1477. Now, one of the reasons that he is probably so revered is that Rambam also studied the works of Hippocrates and Galen, and he synthesized their works into his work. Hippocrates, who lived from 460 to 370, and is that 90 years, Marty?
I don't know.
From 460 to 370. I think that's 90 years BCE. Yes. So he actually lived a really long life. He was a Greek, and he's considered the father of medicine. He was the first to describe symptoms and conditions, and he recommended a natural healing process of rest, good diet, fresh air, and cleanliness. He believed a person should abstain from satiation, just like the Rambam, and not exert himself to the point of collapse. Subsequent to Hippocrates is Galen, who was a Roman, and he lived from 129 to 200 CE. So that is 61, no, 71 years. Um, he was the most accomplished of all the medical researchers in antiquity. He studied anatomy, physiology, pathology, neurology, and introduced the concept of medical experimentation. If you coalesce the works of these master physicians, you can summarize the following: don't overeat and exercise at the right pace. Health was based on on the body's internal factors, but also on air quality, the quality of food, emotions, exercise and rest, sleeping and waking, exertion and retention. And that's what results in a healthy individual. The bedrock principles of the ancient physicians of not eating to satiation is the foundation of most diets that stress portion control. So we see that nothing has changed because portion control is fundamental to every diet. Exercise is equally important because without it, the body does not function optimally. Exercise can be a stress reliever. Otherwise, stress can be chronic and cause illness. The 5 skinny habits incorporates a new habit each week for 5 weeks. So essentially what the author is saying is that in week 1, you incorporate one of the new habits. So you do the new habit and then everything else is the same. But on week 2, you incorporate the habit from week 1 and then the new habit from week 2. And then in week 3, another new habit, week 4, and then finally week 5 comes. So here's the new habit that you do in week 1. You choose one light meal a day. So in other words, your breakfast is either just fruit or just vegetables or any meal that you can put together as long as the total calories is less than 250 calories. Now that works right into my old diet regimen because I have a cup of tea and a protein bar every morning for breakfast. A protein bar is 190 calories and a cup of tea is 0. So I didn't have to do anything the first week. You know, life was just normal. Now for week 2.
Sorry, Sarah, just
Yeah.
one thing. It doesn't have to be breakfast, right? It could be lunch.
It could be any meal.
Like for me, that would work for lunch because breakfast, I usually eat a big meal, but lunch is the one that I have very little.
It could be any meal, but it's one light meal a week, a day, excuse me, a day. But for the first week, you just incorporate the one light meal once a day. Now, week 2, to that light meal, you now have a second meal, which is called a protein vegetable meal. Okay. It's composed of lean protein and side vegetables, but no grains and no starches. And for this meal, for your reward, you can have an optional glass of red wine. Okay. It should be the largest meal of the day. It could be lunch, it could be dinner, but it could be breakfast for Cheryl, and she could be happy the rest of the day with her wine. The thing that's nice about the PV, protein vegetable meal, is you can have seconds. Now, with my light meal, there's no seconds, But with the protein vegetable meal, you can have second helpings of protein, second helpings of vegetables, but you have to remember that you don't want to overeat. Just because you can have seconds, you have to only eat if you're hungry. In week number 3, you add that third meal, and the third meal is called a V plus meal. And it includes a serving of protein and a serving of vegetables, but you can also add a moderate serving of starches. Now, let's say you have your protein, vegetable, and starches, and you're still hungry.
Are you saying that the
Only
first,
thing you can have seconds of
Sarah,
yes.
are you saying that the first week I can only eat one meal a day?
No, I'm saying in the first week, you only change one thing. You add the light.
Can I eat 3 meals a day the first week?
Absolutely. But one meal is going to be a light meal. And maybe you always ate a light meal. But all you do is you change one thing a week. And then the second week, you have the one thing that you changed the first week and the new change. And the third week, you
just eat the rest of the meals in the day, what you can normally eat.
The first week.
What you normally eat. Everything else, right, you just eat normally. If you have your snacks, your breakfast, everything else the same.
Okay. But with each continuous week, you add one more layer. So the third week, you have this V plus, which allows you to have some starches. But the problem is that if you're still hungry, you can only have seconds of vegetables. Now here we come. We're finally at week 4. And no, Sam, you can't have another meal. Week 4, you add exercise. So you're eating those same 3 meals, a light meal, a PV meal, and a V plus meal. But now you're doing 10 minutes of cardiovascular exercise at least 3 times a week. Doesn't mean you can't do it for longer, but it has to be at least, in other words, you could do it every day. You could do it 5 days a week or 6 days a week, but to start at least 3 days a week. Now, here's the week that I don't really understand. Week 5, to the exercise and the 3 other meals, you add substitutions for cravings. And
okay, but Sarah, can I just say something? The substitution meal, I do understand. Because when I came to live in America, I had never heard of people having snacks between their meals. And that's what the substitution meal is about. It's about taking away those snacks.
Except that
that's what it's about. Read if you sorry.
But they are snacks. See, that's the problem, because substitutions are for when you have cravings. So you've had your PV meal and you've stopped eating, and now you have a craving. You want something sweet, or you want something salty, or you want something. So the substitutions are to get you through it. But I mean,
but hang on, Sarah, you're missing the part that he said first. You first have to go drink 2 glasses of water.
That's what I'm getting to.
Okay. So that's before you eat the substitution.
So he says that when you have these cravings, try just drinking 1 to 2 glasses of water and see if that satisfies you. Okay. If it doesn't satisfy you, then try a fruit. If that doesn't satisfy you, try a vegetable. If that doesn't satisfy you, try a low-fat dairy product. But this is the problem. If you had a fruit and a vegetable and a low-fat and all of that, you want to make sure that you don't turn the substitution into a full meal. Anyway, I mean, that's the only concern I have about that. I mean, I certainly don't think he needed to devote a week to this, but it works for him. It worked for other people. So
Sarah, but I really think that I'm sorry, I don't mean to disturb Sarah's talk and everything, but
Lord,
I did read the whole book. Okay, I know most people that are there. I haven't. I read it cover to cover. I finished it. I actually did read it. And to me, the substitution meal is to do with that not snacking. And if you snack, you drink water to see that you're not thirsty. That's your first thing.
but they are snacks.
And then, no, and then if you have to have a snack, you can only have one of them, Sarah. You can't have all of them. You choose which one you want. You can't have all of them.
Well,
it says one or the other.
I know he does say that you need to be careful that it doesn't become a full meal. So, I mean, water is not a full meal. If the water works, then the substitution is great. But once you start adding food in between meals, I'm like you in South Africa. I don't like a lot of in between snacking. Okay. What he suggests, since this is really behavior modification, you're learning new habits, that you should undertake this in partnership with someone who's a loyal friend that you can speak to that can help you get through this. And another thing that he recommends is keeping an accurate diary. Now, you're going to see this reverse, so it's going to look ridiculous. But he does have a sample of this in his book. And you can see that there's circles next to each day. So you can write down whether you followed it or you didn't follow it. And there's room to put down, your emotions and how you felt and what made you go off the diet. And another thing that he does is he has you put a positive affirmation or, a statement about what you're going to concentrate on in this week. And here, the positive affirmation that he gives as an example is giving into a craving does not satisfy. I will implement the substitution method with resolve. So in other words, you're right, Cheryl, that the substitution method is to eliminate cravings, but I question whether it's effective. Just my 2 cents. Okay, so where are we now? Okay. Okay. The premise of the program is to replace questionable dietary choices with these 5 skinny habits. How does one acquire a habit? The best way is by repetition. A person can give a large donation to a charity, and that means that he's a charitable person. Or he can give many small daily donations. And if you choose to give small daily donations, you're going to develop the habit of giving. M. Levine, in his book, Accounting of the Soul, Cheshbon Nefesh, claims that every feeling leaves an impression on a person's memory. When feelings are repeated, the effect is cumulative, and the result is a habit. However, the author, Mr. Levin, admits that willpower is inconsequential compared to desire. But each time you try to overcome that desire, it leaves an impression which will be cumulative, and ultimately you will succeed. Keeping a record like the diary is another way to give you positive feedback and help positive impressions accumulate. Rambam states that behavior characteristics only become fixed as part of your personality through repetition. So positive acts result in positive behaviors, and negative acts result in negative behaviors. Your perceptions also play a part in your view of something. If you see something as out of the realm of your choices, you don't want it. And a perfect example is how Orthodox people adhere to the laws of kashrut. We just see things out of our realm of choices. So if you find deviations from the 5 skinny habits as outside of your realm of choices, you'll be successful with the plan. Another story he brings up is about a scholar who spoke with survivors in DP camps after the Second World War. He came to one survivor who was very angry, and he explained to him that the reason why he was so angry is that an inmate in his lager had smuggled a sitter into the camp and would charge everyone who wished to use it their daily bread ration. And that really made him very angry. But the scholar said to him, why doesn't he instead appreciate the Mesiris Nefesh of the people who willingly gave up their bread ration to use the sitter? And this satisfied the survivor and changed his impression of the incident. And that's in essence what each person needs to do to change their perceptions about their relation with food. The author is striving for a shift in perception to develop a good habit, which with repetition results in a subconscious accumulation process and results in a perceptive change. The goal is not to have you make correct choices intellectually, but reflexively. So don't think about it, it just becomes second nature. Stress is a main reason that people don't succeed in diet programs. Stress and sleep are problems that often occur together. The Rambam advocated 8 hours of sleep a night and discouraged regular naps during the day. He also believed that there was a definite connection between physical and emotional health. And he felt that to counteract stress, it could be done with relaxation and mindfulness. What is mindfulness? Bringing one's complete attention to the present experience on a moment-to-moment basis. So it's really clearing your mind and focusing on what it is you're doing, focusing on food while you're eating, focusing in the present, not about what you're going to eat tomorrow, not about what you're going to eat at dinner, but what you're eating at that point. And here are some tips on how how you can bring mindfulness into eating. Now, I challenge anyone to do all of these, but they really are good ideas. Take a few breaths and focus before you start a meal. Sit down at your dining table, but you shouldn't be reading, and you shouldn't be standing, and you shouldn't be in bed, and you shouldn't be driving while you're eating. Set the table nicely so it creates a positive atmosphere. Turn off the television or computer, put down your book or newspaper, stop talking or texting on your phone, and pay full attention to your meal and your body's signals while you're eating. Now, this is really hard because I've been trying to do this. Place a fork full of food in your mouth. Put the fork down. This is a lot harder than you think. You're hungry and you can't wait for the next bite. Resist the urge to slurp down the meal. Leave the fork on the table before you take your next bite. And in conjunction with that, chew slowly and enjoy the texture of the food, its flavor and vibrant colors, and the food's aroma. Be conscious of your different sensations and overall experience. In the middle of your meal, take a 2-minute break and decide how much more food you will want to eat to walk away satisfied, but not too full. Now, you have to realize that I was raised by a person who told me to clean my plate, and I just can't break that habit. Observe how you feel at the end of the meal. If you did overweight, if you did overeat, don't beat yourself up. Pay attention to the physical and emotional distress and strategize how you can prevent overeating in the next meal. I think those are all wonderful ideas, and I actually have enough time now that I do try to do that, but it really is a training process, and that probably will take more than 5 weeks to get into your system. Another thing that the author has, which of course I absolutely love, is a meal schedule. So after he's explained all the weeks, in week 5, he has a meal schedule. And what do I love so much about it? Everything is kosher. I mean, have you ever seen diets that have a week schedule, a schedule of what you should eat in a week, but you have to start substituting because none of it is stuff you can eat. So an example aphorism, it is easier to change a habit than your nature. I guess so. So he recommends you begin the day with 2 glasses of water, hot or cold. Exercise for 10 minutes. For breakfast, he recommends the light meal, a bowl of cut up melon. Then he recommends midday, 2 more glasses of water. And if you want a snack, he suggests cottage cheese with strips of vegetables. For lunch, he suggests tuna wrap, but take seconds only of salad or vegetables. That's the V+ meal. Then he has 2 more glasses of water. For a snack in the afternoon, he suggests strips of vegetables. And for dinner, it's the PV meal, grilled chicken with a generous helping of sauteed vegetables and salad. And a glass of wine is optional. And then he goes on and he has 10 days worth of possible meals, which is, I mean, to me, that's a plus. He does say that you should drink before meals, not with meals. And he is really into positive affirmations. And unfortunately, I am really not into positive affirmations because what he wants you to do is he wants you to say it aloud. He wants you to repeat it. He wants you to use your imagination to actually see yourself in this affirmation. And unfortunately, that's a little too touchy-feely for me. And so I haven't done that, but maybe that's why, I'm not skinny mini now. Anyway, once you reach your desired weight, you can make smart exceptions, but you should try to keep them closer to 100 calories and no more than 300 calories. And the smart exceptions are a whole list of different foods. For instance, a regular ice cream bar is 210 to 375 calories, but an ice pop can be 20 to 50. A cracker, one cracker, if you can eat just one, is 20 calories. A cookie is 280 to 310. A small bite chocolate is 25 calories. Chocolate covered nuts, one pack is 230. And he goes on. I mean, there are like 3 or 4 pages of different smart exceptions that you can take. Now, if in fact you overdo it and you're beyond 300 calories on your smart exception, you can make that all good. Just change one of your meals that day to an extra light meal. So instead of eating a PV, a V plus, and a light meal, have your great snack that's way out of whack and have 2 light meals and 1 PV meal. And it all comes out in the wash. Now, you have an option of having a glass of wine. And all of us know that wine has many health properties, but it can't be white wine. It has to be red wine. And among the health qualities that wine has is heart health, disease prevention, fewer common colds, weight loss, mood enhancer. But when should you drink it? According to Mr. Zolberg, never on an empty stomach, but always with food. And again, from the 4th week on, you should start developing your exercise routine. Obviously, when you're only doing 10 minutes, you don't have to have a cool down and a warm up, because you're just not, your whole warm up and cool down is your 10 minutes. But it's best to.
Wait a minute.
Hello?
Hold on. Hi.
Hi. It's best to exercise before eating, and you gradually increase your exercise. You start out with 10 minutes 3 times a week, but by the time you get to 15 weeks, you've been increasing your exercise 2 minutes a week for the next 5 weeks, and then 2 minutes a week for the next 5 weeks. You should be up to 30 minutes a day, 3 times a week, or maybe even more. You need to pace yourself. When you're doing mild or moderate exercise, you can generally talk. If when you're exercising, you can't talk, you're probably doing very vigorous exercise. Once you're regularly doing cardiovascular exercise, you should start using some weights and doing strengthening exercises, starting with a small weight and building up. The only thing is, if you're doing an exercise other than walking, you should always check with your physician to make sure that he approves of it. The book also has 4 appendices. One lists all the possible foods and puts them into the food groups. He also describes a turbo phase. So if you got stuck and you don't seem to be losing weight anymore and you haven't reached your goal, he says just change the diet and have 2 light meals and 1 other meal a day, and try that for a week and see if that doesn't get you going. Another discusses exercise plans in greater detail. And finally, the last appendice talks about how Maimonides and the other ancients viewed air quality, sleep, sleep positions, sleeping tips, bathing, and of course, waste management, which was very important to them. For air quality, it said don't live in a city. You don't listen to them. And sleep should be at least 8 hours, and you should go to sleep on your left side and somehow end up in the morning on your right side, but don't sleep on your stomach. But anyway, I mean, I really thought it was an interesting diet book. It was certainly easy to read. I don't know how efficacious it is, but it's certainly different, and I enjoyed it. So if there are any questions, please unmute yourself and I'll try and answer.
What are his nutritional qualifications? No.
None. He is a social worker, but he has read. Let me read his CV. Spent 7 years studying in Israel. Considered one of the foremost experts in Maimonides' medical works. His book, The Life Transforming Diet, sold more than 20,000 copies. He has a master's degree from Columbia and is now a certified ACE health coach and fitness specialist. He has been featured on national television networks, including ABC, CBS, PIX. Zolberg founded the BioHealth Tech LLC, Skin Habits LLC, which maintains health-related websites and produce health products. He lives in New York. So the point is he has some certification, but his degree was in social work, and his life just took off.
He's very young, right, Sarah? He's very young. He's like in his 30s, right?
Yeah, he's in his 30s.
Yeah, he's young.
Yeah,
not old.
Not as young as our grandchildren.
I have to say, as I said, I did read the whole book. I didn't realize, I've never joined one of your book clubs before, so I didn't realize it's just a review of someone that read it and not everybody else that read it. But I really liked the part that he quoted from Maimonides. Can I share it maybe?
Is it on page 73?
73 and 4, yeah.
Yeah. I was going to read that, but I thought it was already getting too long. But go ahead. It's very
okay.
Excellent.
So basically, Maimonides says contemplation alone reduces bad thoughts, anxiety, and distress. Most thoughts that cause us distress or sorrow, sadness, or grief occur from one of two things. Either one thinks of the past, like the loss of a beloved one, of money, or of an opportunity. Or second, one thinks of something negative that may occur in the future, like a possible loss or injury, and one fears that will happen. It is known through all rational observation that thinking about the past has no benefit at all. Sorrow and grief about the past are not rational. There is no difference between a person who grieves over financial loss and the love of someone who grieves because he is human or not an angel or a star. It is similar to any impossibilities. Similarly, any anxiety that results from thoughts about that might happen in the future is pointless because every potential occurrence lies in the realm of possibility. Maybe it will happen and maybe it will not. So this is the key that I think. Let a person replace his stress and anxiety with hope in Hashem. It is conceivable that the opposite of what one fears will actually happen, and it is equally in the realm of possibility. And he says in his book that you should reread that very often, and he even still rereads that very, very often.
Maimonides gives a guarantee: if you do everything he says, you will live a long and healthy life.
Okay.
But it's very interesting because that section that I didn't read, but it's wonderful because it says sometimes you think that, like, let's say you get a big promotion and it's something you've looked forward to, and you finally get it and you're so happy, everything I ever wanted has happened, but you're under so much stress because of all the extra work that it's not so good. And sometimes maybe you get a demotion and you think, oh, this is the worst thing in the world. How will I ever live through this? But in fact, you have all this extra time and you have so much less stress that maybe you'll be happier. So he's essentially saying, take things as they come. You're going to get through them.
True. Thank you very much, Sarah. You inspired me to read the book and inspired me to listen to what you had to say too.
Sarah, thank you very much. Very interesting ideas in the book. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else have any other questions?
Just unmute yourself.
Yeah, Sarah, we want to thank you. I think it was very pleasant and very enjoyable, and it's a good thing to read about and learn about a few days before Thanksgiving.
Okay. Aunt Phyllis, thank you so much for coming. It's so nice.
Well, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and being with your friends was wonderful. Have a
May I tell you
wonderful
about the
Thanksgiving,
next episode in our book reviews? Monday, December 7th, Herschel Sennett wants to review Citizens of London by Lynn Olson, and he also will be only on Zoom. I think we should try to convince them to do it in person also, because I know some people like to come in person. And I think it's never a big crowd in the evening. So it would be very, very interesting if we would add more people. They're not here now, but maybe if there were, what occurred to me, Dave, is
the shul is available. We can do it hybrid as we did 2 weeks ago.
but
It's really up to everybody.
even if the lecturer wants to do Zoom only, that wouldn't work.
No, it wouldn't work because the pictures are too small.
If the lecture is Zoom only, then why would the people come to shul? Okay. Okay. So David, go take over and tell them some more. But I would like to thank you for attending. Sarah, it was very, very interesting.
They would come to shul to see you, Sam.
No, but they won't come to shul if you are on Zoom. If the lecture is on Zoom.
They could put up. They could put it on the.
But they might as well sit at home and watch the same thing. No, this would only work if the lecturer wanted to do both Zoom and in person.
And anyway,
David, go ahead.
Thank you all for coming, and thank you for letting me do this.
Oh, it was beautiful. Thank you.
Thank
Dave,
you
pleasure.
very much, Sarah, and everyone. Bye-bye.
Dave, would you like to?
Okay.
Everyone,
conclude?
bye-bye.
Good night to everybody.
Thank
Good
you.
night.